Hello and welcome to another video. So I just got back from the beach and I wanted to recommend you guys some books with the vibe of like foggy days by the ocean, maritime, like old boats, lighthouses, small towns by the coast, that kind of feeling, that kind of vibe. And I call this nautical academia. And if that's something that you're interested in reading about, the type of book that sounds interesting to you, keep on watching. So the first book I have to recommend is We Run the Tides by Vendela Vida, which is about two girls, Lullaby and Maria, who go to a private all-girls school in San Francisco, I think in the 90s. I believe maybe the 80s or 90s. On their way to school one day, they both see this terrible thing happen, but Lullaby kind of remembers it or says it happens, and Maria denies that happens or does not remember it happening. And then one day, Maria goes missing. So this book really has that like atmosphere of San Francisco with the fog. It's on Sea Cliff, if you know where that is in San Francisco, and the ocean is kind of a big part of the atmosphere in this almost kind of threatening way. So I think this is like a great example if you're really going for those nautical academia vibes. This next book, I've really not seen anybody talk about it, so if you want to read a book that is kind of more rare on BookTube or BookTok or whatever, this one is a good one. It's The Seas by Samantha Hunt, and just like look, it's beautiful. Like beautiful cover. It's based in this small seaside town that's kind of very low income, a lot of alcoholism. It's kind of like a dead end place. It's not really a touristy place. It's kind of the only thing you can do is maybe be a fisherman, but that's kind of it. Our main character is this young woman, has unrequited love for this Iraq veteran who's 13 years older than her. And she, as the cover kind of shows, believes she's a mermaid. There's a lot of magical realism, but it's a way of her kind of coping with the hopelessness of her life. If you want a book that really writes about pain and heartbreak in a beautiful way, I would definitely recommend The Seas. This next book is heartbreaking in a very different way, and it's also one I haven't seen that much of. It's The End We Start From by Megan Hunter. And this book it's a fiction story about global warming, in which the city of London has now flooded because of global warming. And it follows this new mother who just had a baby who is trying to find a safe place for herself and her baby, and is dealing with the emotions of the world suddenly changing. And I read this right at the start of COVID, and I think that it was very nice to read something that felt familiar to me and in my emotions. I think she did a really great job matching those feelings of what's gonna happen is, you know, everything has kind of collapsed in my life in this way. So if you feel like you need a book like that, it's very kind of water, ocean centric. She's on boats quite a bit. I think it's done in a really beautiful way. Also very easy to get through. These are like the pages. As you can see, it's more almost like poetry with a story. And then it's like 150 of these pages. So you can get through this in like a day. Easy. This is the type of book you might like when things feel a little bit like out of control. So or if you're a new mother, it might feel like that too. I don't have any kids, so I don't know, but I really enjoyed this book as well. Next, I'm gonna recommend a classic, which is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, because of course, a classic book that's kind of surrounding a lighthouse, surrounding kind of the ocean. I think it's kind of the perfect nautical academia vibe. The type of book this is like is very much getting deep in the psychological head of all the characters, which I love books like that. You're just really understanding the emotions, motivations of each character. One thing I will say is that there's absolutely no plot, almost no plot at all. But really, as I was reading this book, I didn't care. And it's also one of these books you can read over and over and over again, and you get something new each time. So if you really want more of kind of a classic, if that's more of your thing, is classic books, is this deep writing that you can kind of sit in for a while, to the Lighthouse for sure. The next book I've actually recommended before, but I think it also really fits into nautical academia, and it's The Breath of a Whale. Like, if you just want to learn about like marine life in a way that is very accessible, great book. I won't go through it too much because I've already talked about it in a different video, but great nonfiction if you kind of want to learn more about whales. This is one of the best whale books out there. My last book that I'm going to recommend is On Lighthouses by Yasmina Barrera, and this is actually translated from Spanish. So if you have that kind of on one of your bucket lists for reading, this is a good one. It sounds really kind of boring. She's going through different lighthouses. It's not boring to me, but it sounds like it's a boring book. But this author is able to write in a way that it feels more kind of like this kind of old classic travel book where she goes to these different lighthouses, meets these different people, writes on it, talks about kind of emotions she's feeling, talks about like significances of lighthouses history, like the first lighthouses, and is also, like The Breath of a Whale, able to write nonfiction in such an accessible way in which you feel like you're reading a novel, right? So I think this, if I were to do a trip in like Maine or Rhode Island or one of those kind of East Coast lighthouse centric places, I would love to read this on this trip. So if you are watching this video because you're doing a trip like that, this is the book. This is the travel book for you, for sure. Well, those are my recommendations for nautical academia books. Let me know if there's any books that you think would go with nautical academia. I'm just making this up because I think it should be a thing. And like and subscribe.